Mike DeCourcy with us from the Sporting News. So there's your present. Open it slowly. um, Mike, in college basketball, what a weekend last Saturday was. We went through the week of finals, so there was basically nothing going on, and which is hard to take for college basketball fans used to a constant assortment, a menu of games. But then, buddy, when Saturday came, it was like, well, let's just bring out all the steaks and the fillets and everything all at once from a game perspective. Indiana, of course, hosting Kansas, Purdue, in essence, hosting Arizona, Kentucky and North Carolina, and I'm sure many others that I'm not even thinking of right now. But the Indiana-Kansas game, a really, really good game. It was a great opportunity for Indiana to get that quote-unquote statement win that they do not have on their resume and is going to be difficult now to get. As a matter of fact, I think that depends on what Michigan State does, because they only play them once, and that's at the end of the season at home. So if Michigan State comes back around like they kind of tend to do with Tom Izzo and become back up to being a higher ranked team, Purdue, we know they're back to number one, so that's an opportunity. Illinois is probably another opportunity, maybe Northwestern. Other than that, I don't know that they have a shot of getting that quote-unquote statement win the rest of the year.
Well, I think you have to look at Ohio State, Wisconsin, Nebraska to an extent. You've got 2 against them. I think those are all victories that would matter significantly if the Hoosiers could get them. I think people sometimes overestimate, like, if you don't get an important non-conference win that looks good, then, oh gosh, what are we going to do? Well, what it does is it recalibrates your league. It means, okay, well, you didn't do great in non-conference in terms of collecting significant victories, so now you have to do better in your league. You can't go 500 in this year's Big Ten with this level of achievement for IU and get in. It's not impossible, but it's highly unlikely that will be good enough this year. The Big Ten's achievement out of conference hasn't been great. It's better after Saturday. Saturday was a big day for the conference. They had a lot of significant wins. They had opportunity to get one more, did not, and that's why IU sitting there discussing what they need to do. But they can go out if they play like they did on Saturday. They're going to beat a lot of teams. They're going to beat a lot of teams in the Big Ten. You can't play like you did against Louisville and beat many teams in the Big Ten. Now, I mean, I know they got the win in that game, but they weren't good that night for most of it, at least maybe till the last 15 minutes or so. But that's not going to beat many good teams in the Big Ten. But Saturday's effort's going to beat a lot of them, if not most of them. Certainly in Assembly Hall, if they put that level of performance out, they're going to beat most of them. So I think it still is about continuing to grow as a team. And again, I can't emphasize this enough that if Xavier Johnson's able to come back soon, they become a different team in a lot of ways and should be a significantly better one.
Absolutely. And I think that how much he would have mattered last Saturday, we can only pontificate on, but I certainly think that would have made a huge difference. But they played well enough to win that game, except it was just the last 5 minutes of that game that they lost it in. And it's hard. It's hard for them to deal with that, I'm sure, because when you play that hard for that long, and more importantly, they did it with a shrunken rotation, which had been something that was been brought up to Mike Woodson more than once, and he was kind of bristling at it anytime someone would bring that up. And but he stretched it where his guys played a ton of minutes. But the same it was the same for Kansas. If you looked over there, they had 4 guys, I think, that played 36 minutes or more,
Right.
So it's the same thing. Those guys are not coming off the floor.
Well, they don't have a deep team. They have a 4-man team right now. That's the reality. That's Kansas. And that's why I've expressed some question about how good they are now. Now, whether or not they can eventually get from some of their bench players some level of high-end contributions, I don't know. But it's going to be hard to go through league play playing 4 guys for 35 minutes plus. It's not. It's just the games come too fast. In the Big 12, they're highly competitive. They need more from their bench than they're getting. I think for IU, the problem that they ran into was that not having Xavier Johnson, I said this before, it weakens your bench. Not because I thought that Gabe Cupps did a great job of defending the point guard spot. DeJuan Harris is a terrific player. He was very good, solid again, but he wasn't controlling the action in the way that he often does until late in the game. I thought that when Cupps is able to come off the bench, they need less minutes from their other guys. I thought Caleb Banks committed 4 fouls in that game, and if you went back and watched the tape,
bad fouls. They were bad fouls.
Every one was so punitive. It's like there's 2 seconds left on the shot clock and you're fouling, or you're fouling a guy that's making a shot, or whatever it was. But I remember every single foul that he committed, it was like, ooh, that one hurt. You can foul in a game and it not be punitive, but he just happened to be in a spot where every time he got called for a foul, it really hurt the Hoosiers. And maybe he doesn't have to play as much in that game if Cupps is coming off the bench and Xavier's your point guard. You don't know how well everything else would have gone, because Gabe played really well and the offense was flowing and all of that. But I just think that injury is underrated by a lot of, especially people who follow college basketball. You can't go pick somebody up off the waiver wire when you have an injury in college basketball. You probably, especially in today's day and age, you can't have 2 guys who are starting quality at a position like point guard, because they won't stay. If there's 2 of them, one of them is going to transfer. So it's really hard to be deep. So if you happen to be one of the unfortunate teams that gets injured, you're in trouble. And that's true all the way up. Like if Kansas lost one of their 4, where would they be? They've got 4 terrific players, outstanding players, but it gets really thin after that. If they lost one of their 4, they would be in big trouble. And I think that's true of every team in college basketball. I think Purdue probably has the least problems with depth of most teams, but even there are certain players you wouldn't want to be missing.
Yeah, and Indiana is not only missing Xavier Johnson now, and will continue to miss him for an extended period of time, per Mike Woodson. We don't know when that will be. Ja'Kai Newton has not seen the court. That's a huge loss. And they have an open scholarship on top of that they weren't able to fill with another guard spot. So that right there just tells you that's where Indiana is missing so much, where they would normally be able to put on the floor.
Yeah, I said this before. There's no team in college basketball that can afford an injury to a rotation player without being significantly affected. And right now, it's IU's misfortune to be in that position. And I thought that they did a great job on Saturday of fighting through that. They played a really good game. What they have to do is not be discouraged by the fact that game that they delivered, they executed great at both ends of the floor. I think Trey Galloway, the number of layups he was able to get on Kevin McCullough, who's considered one of the better defenders in college basketball, I mean, he just absolutely lit him up on Saturday. They have to carry that through into their subsequent games and continue to execute at that level, because in order to overcome the absence of the players that they're missing, they have to execute at a high level. They're not a good enough shooting team to overcome it just by wailing in threes, but they can execute at a high level and force teams to guard players on the cut, to deal with the post that they have multiple options in. There are things that they can do really well.
It seemed like Indiana, their offense in general was a lot better and different, more open, more with more spacing against Kansas. It just seems like they were just a little more free flowing than they had been, not trying to force the ball inside, which part of that was because of Kansas was taking Khalil Ware away. And that was their plan, and it kind of worked. But it seemed like either that or Indiana opened up the offense to make it a little more free flowing. And like you said, Trey Galloway just torched Kansas, getting a career high, and he did phenomenal from the field. Most of the guys shot the ball well, but it wasn't just quite enough as down the stretch Kansas came alive. The one thing I have to say about Hunter Dickinson is he just did not get frazzled. No matter what was going on, no matter what the crowd was throwing at him, and I don't mean literally, I meant booing and all that, he never got frazzled. He had an air ball and didn't matter. He didn't get frazzled. Kansas didn't get frazzled.
No, they hung in there without a doubt. I think a lot of that comes from Harris. Some from KJ Adams. Those guys have played in a ton of games and won a ton of games for Kansas. They both were on a very successful team last year, along with McCullough. So I think that veteran experience that they have with those three guys really makes a difference. And then Dickinson, he knows that he looks around and he sees guys who've won conference championships. In Harris's case. He's won a national championship. I believe KJ was on that team, but wasn't the high rotation player. But Harris was the starting point guard on a national champion. And he was a significant contributor to that. So I think that helps Hunter a lot to know he's playing with that level of experience. A year ago, he was playing with a high level of talent, but the experience and the understanding of how to win wasn't there with his teammates a year ago that now he knows is around him. And I think that plays into why he's able to remain as calm as he is.
How important is it for Indiana to make the tournament this year, being that this is Mike Woodson's third season, having gotten a team into a play-in game and then gotten into the regular tournament last year? To have a drop-off would be seen as a drop-off.
Well, I think it's important because they have a team that's good enough. I mean, they have enough talent to do it. Again, when that talent isn't all on the floor, you're impacted. But when you have players like Ware, who's playing at a really high level, Mbako's coming along, Renew is getting better and better, and Trey, who's played so much basketball for IU, I think you look at that as the core of a team that ought to be good enough to make it. It would be better if they had the full complement of players all the way through this non-conference, and they haven't, and that's had an impact. So I think it would. I don't think it would be disastrous. That's not how programs work. Not the ones that are successful. I think it would be disappointing for IU fans because they know they're so close. Because there is enough talent there if they have the depth to go with it. I don't know what Xavier's circumstance will be, how long we're going to have to wait to see him back out there. But the longer it goes, the less they are built like a tournament team, because you don't have a point guard who you expect to be running full-time 30 minutes a game, a tournament team. And Gabe Cupps wasn't recruited to be that. He was recruited to play off the bench this year. And in that role, he did very well early. And if you watch how he's played as a starter, it's obvious that he would be very well suited to playing 18 to 20 minutes a game and would be contributing very well if that were the case.